views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronxtalk. Mayor Bill de Blasio is engaged in a comprehensive effort to build 200,000 units of affordable housing throughout the city of New York. The pathway toward that goal, the city claims, is a series of zoning proposals couched in two concepts: a proposal for ZQA, zoning for quality and affordability, and a proposal for MIH, which is mandatory inclusionary housing. In these 1,000-page proposals are attempts to change long-standing parking requirements, changes in the heights of floors in buildings, which the city says would help establish more community commercial spaces, and an effort to create more housing for senior citizens, among many other concepts. I've talked to people all over the Bronx and studied the city's documents and proposals, and I have to say, one of the issues involved is their complexity, making it a challenge for regular people to understand concepts that could affect their communities. In addition, tonight's guests, the chairs of two Bronx community boards, are concerned about a number of these proposals, and we'll give them a chance to review those concerns, as well as try to clarify what's on the table for your consideration. Please note that over the next 2 weeks, two Bronx council members will be joining us on the show, as the council will have the final say on these proposals, and so we will include that conversation in those programs. But for tonight, it's the city's zoning proposals. If you have questions or comments on the city's zoning proposals, who doesn't, then please call into the program at 718-960-7261 or send an email to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org or post them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. For the here and now, the chairman of Community Board 5, which includes the Bronx neighborhoods of Fordham, Mount Hope, and University Heights. Welcome back, Dr. Bola Omotosho.
Thank you, Gary, for having me here tonight.
Thank you. And also the chair from Community Board 8, which includes the Bronx neighborhoods of Riverdale, then Cortlandt Village, and Kingsbridge. Dan Paternak, welcome back to you.
Thank you, Gary.
Dr. Omotosho, let's start with you. We could go anywhere. We were talking about it before the show, about how many different angles there are. What is most concerning to you? What would you like the people in Community Board 5 to know about what's on the table?
Well, these two major zoning proposals, it's a citywide proposal, which does not only affect Board 5 alone, it affects the entire city. But for Board 5, especially, like you rightly said, it's about a 1,000-page proposal, which we've been struggling, having meetings upon meetings, and as a matter of fact, last shot at it is to have a public hearing, which is not mandated by the way the proposal, the text amendment is framed. But we're going to have it so that we can educate ourselves, especially the community board members that will have to put their votes to it later this month.
I realize I was completely unfair in saying there's 1,000 pages, and I was leaving you to summarize it for us in just a few sentences. But out of everything that you've read and everything you know, what is one thing that stands out and makes you say, you know what, this is something either you like or don't like?
Well, just like any other thing, you have the ZQA, which of course have three components to it. Right. The senior housing, and also the latter component, which is about parking, elimination of parking, which for some reason the city planning have tried to make the presentation a little softer by changing a couple of wordings, not in the proposal itself, but when they make their presentation because of the pushback. Parking is a very huge problem for us in Board 5.
I would say probably in every single district of the Bronx. And I'll read right off the city's website, which it says the proposal would reduce unnecessary parking requirements for affordable housing, and they go on to say that people who use affordable housing are less likely to have cars, and therefore, if they live within jurisdiction or a certain amount of distance from a train station, then they wouldn't need parking. What's your thought about that?
My thought about that is just so simple. We are not in Bod 5 as a transit-rich community the way it's portrayed. The demographic of my community, especially the geographical, we are a hilly community, which crisscross, we have well over 13 step streets. And that tells you how much hills that we have. Mm-hmm. And it's not that easy to cut across the district, even though they look at it from the area of being transit-rich. We're not that transit-rich.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to start with, since we started with parking, we'll go to Mr. Paternak in a moment, but just given the geography, and I was thinking about this, and folks who know the Bronx, and who all know the Bronx, you're in the West Bronx. Let's say on a Sunday afternoon in the summer, a family says we want to take a Sunday and go to Orchard Beach. Is there any way to get to Orchard Beach logically from your neighborhood if you don't have a car?
Very difficult.
I loaded that question. I knew there was no chance.
Easy.
But that's the kind of thing that would concern me. So maybe, Mr. Paternak, you can go through and talk about the specifics of the parking proposal. As I understand it, in my reading of it, was that with new buildings, there used to be this long-standing requirement to include a certain number of parking spaces. In this proposal, that wouldn't be there.
Yeah, not only are they going to reduce the number of parking spaces in these affordable housing buildings, but for senior housing buildings, and this is one of the most drastic changes, if there's an existing senior housing building, they will allow the owner of that building to eliminate all of its parking.
So in other words, even if they already have?
If it's already existing and they have it right now today, this proposal will allow that owner to get rid of all of its parking and build and construct additional units in that parking lot.
So again, just extrapolating out to a logical situation. You may be a senior citizen at the age of 68, and one would like to think you're still healthy and able to move around, especially at that time in your life. You want to enjoy, maybe you're retiring, or you want to go take a vacation or drive up in the country, or go, I know we want to spend in the Bronx, but you go shopping in Westchester, or a trip from Riverdale to Orchard Beach, and you're saying there's no place. But there's extra parking in Riverdale, of course.
No, there is not. And not in our area. In Kingsbridge Heights, where we are, there isn't extra parking. As a matter of fact, we don't have parking. I'm sure, I know you're aware that if you don't have a garage spot within our community in Kingsbridge Heights and Van Cortlandt Village, you're going to circle for an hour if you get home after 8 p.m. each night, searching for a parking spot. And now, what we're hearing with these proposals is that there's going to be an even reduction in parking. And we're in the transit zone. So
that's right, because you might, and many of the areas, certainly in the area near the #1 train, or you might even be able to get to the D train over in the Bedford Park area, whatever, and you still would lose parking in that.
You would lose parking in that area, and.
Well, what is the response and the dialogue with the city when this comes up? I'm sure, and both of your communities, I'm sure, are going, are you guys out of your minds? I mean, I'm a Bronxite, frankly, I have a car. I would react the same way.
So what we've heard at our board is that seniors, don't have as many cars, and
well, that's likely true.
Likely true, except we know that not only do the seniors still drive, we also know that people come to visit the seniors at their residences. We also know that there's staff that work in these buildings where the seniors live as well. So it's not just the seniors who we know are using the parking spots, because when we go around to some of our senior buildings at night, we do see the lots full. Now, city planning has stated that they've spoken to certain agencies and that they've done a little bit of research and that they hear there's empty parking spots. But we haven't seen that in our communities.
Really? Empty parking spots? I'd like to find. And I'm not only talking about my neighborhood or either of your neighborhoods. You can go anywhere in the Bronx. I'd like to find some extra parking spots. Now, here's the theory. The theory is this will save money for consumers because it'll drive prices down. Developers obviously want more properties and more area to be able to build properties so that they can, frankly, afford to build affordable housing. Is that a logical explanation?
So
you're looking at him.
well, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in first.
I'll start with you, and then
Okay.
we'll give him a shot.
So I'll start with, at our presentation last week, with regards to the zoning for quality and affordability, one of our board members asked, with some of these height requirements, the 5 feet particularly, how much affordable housing are you actually getting from this increase in height? And the answer was, we're not getting any affordable housing from this extra 5 feet.
Well, what do you know?
all.
Again, part of the complexity. Explain this 5 feet concept.
So,
for people.
in the under zoning for quality and affordability, what the city is doing is allowing developers to increase the height of buildings. And the height, it varies depending on the type of district in
taller
which you live
buildings
in.
would bring us more apartments. People need housing. Let's be real about that, right?
Correct, except when you start asking how much affordable housing units are really coming out of what they see, we're hearing that there's very little. And when we asked, well, where is the affordable coming out from ZQA? The answer was, well, we'll see some affordable units created within the restriction of parking and some in the increased height in the senior housing element of it. So for us, that was very disturbing because it's for quality and affordability. So we had very many quality questions, and then how many affordable units are being created? And we weren't really happy with the responses that we were getting, which led to more questions from our community board members.
Let's ask Dr. Omotosho basically the same kind of question. Isn't there a fundamental economic logic to this? Listen, we all need parking. We all want parking spaces. But, you know, we want to drive the prices down and we want to be able to build more affordable housing. I mean, that's the philosophy.
If you look at my district, which from Fordham Road to Cross Bronx, Major Digging to Webster, we're already a dense community. So when they talk about increasing the housing units within my district, for instance, we are bringing more density, no doubt about it. Now you want to eliminate parking, which is something that already is not existing.
As far as the density question goes now, also in your district is the whole Jerome Avenue corridor, and that's right. Starts a whole other question. But if you put more people in a space, and we had this dialogue with many people in your community over the Jerome Avenue corridor, and this came over simple, numbers of people who ride the number 4 train, which may come up through your district as well.
That's right.
There are other things that you will need in a community if you are increasing density, like schools, shopping areas, any number of other amenities. Is this part of this very complex proposal to say, well, wait a minute, we're going to bring more people in, let's analyze what we're doing?
Good. Let me make it a little simpler.
I wish you would. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We appreciate it, Dr. Oman.
Why I'm trying to make it a little simpler is because we are also privileged to be part of the Jerome Avenue study, which is a little different from the the zoning text amendment, but it's all interwoven. Actually, the zone text amendment forms a template of the Jerome Avenue study. And that template is something, that's why I mentioned density. And there are so many requirements when you put more people within a very small space. And going on and on, I can continue talking to tomorrow, schools, jobs, good shopping, and several other things.
Health facilities.
Several things.
I should add, we have many underserved communities, despite our wonderful health resources in the borough.
Unfortunately, it's not something I'm proud of, that my community is, tends to be one of the worst in the city when it comes to health report. We had Legionnaire recently.
So you're concerned that if there are more people in there, less services or even the same services.
Yeah.
It will get worse.
And if I can just add
Yeah,
to
of
that, you brought up a very good point, which is, the size of the units and I guess how, if you're really packing in residents and packing in apartments, we had asked at our meeting whether or not there was a minimum size to units. And we learned under the zoning for quality and affordability, there actually wasn't really a minimum size established similar to contextual
Well,
zoning.
we had heard the number that I heard was 250-foot square foot apartments. Now I don't know, looking in
How
the
big
studio
it
where
is.
we are, how big that is. That doesn't sound
It's a
that
box.
big. It's a box.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And what we learned, and it was difficult at our meeting to kind of get out what the minimum number was, and we started asking, and the question that we finally came to was, is it possible to build a 250 square foot apartment within this proposal? And the answer was yes. So for us, we had a very large concern, whether senior apartments would be that small or any other apartments, because what we're looking for is quality housing. And if you look at the contextual zoning within the Bronx or the city of New York, there is a minimum unit size of 400 square feet. And it seems this new proposal for quality and affordability has kind of thrown that out the window. And we have a big concern with that when it comes to health conditions and livable conditions within the community.
It sounds like, from listening to you and other research that I've done, that the city and the mayor, frankly, is just hell-bent on building these apartments, and they're just trying to do it so they can achieve that goal without taking the proper steps. Is that a fair analysis?
Well, the analysis is fair, but the key goal is that's why they're bringing in the zoning text amendment.
So they
that
can change the rules.
Exactly.
But let's put on our other hats now. We have the 421A program, which gives developers tax breaks in exchange for building affordable housing. Is that sufficient incentive to build affordable housing? And isn't that one of the biggest issues that we've had? Developers are only going to build if they can see it profitable, and of course if they can't charge high rents and they have to include a certain percentage of affordable housing, they won't build the housing. So maybe we do need something like this to get everything built.
Well, even it's my understanding that even the 421A, the way we know it, is changing.
It's absolutely correct.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
So what those changes are, I don't know the details.
So
You
I'm
wanna
glad you
answer
brought
that?
that up, because your question, we don't really know the answer yet, because like Dr. Amatosha said, 421A has just changed. And it changed this year because the state legislature changed the 421A program. And now, what's never been done before, what we've never seen, is that the
The
exemption...
results of that change.
Well, we haven't seen it. We
haven't
won't
seen
see it for some time. But the biggest change ever was the fact that the abatement, the property tax abatement, is now going to 35 years. And that's amazing, because under the last few mayors, the greatest abatement that we have seen is 25 to 30 years with the zone down. Now we're seeing a 35-year tax abatement. So that's a huge incentive for developers, and we don't yet know the effects of it.
Give me an alternative. Play mayor of the city of New York or something else, and
Yeah.
you say, okay, we've got these ideas. We need affordable housing.
Absolutely.
We need to add more housing, quality housing. If you're the mayor of the city of New York, you've got these proposals on the table, and everybody's complaining about them, but we still have to get the goal achieved. How would you go about it?
I think what we're seeing here is we have a finance problem. We need to figure out exactly how to build affordable housing
And create the incentive, or maybe it already exists for developers. That was my point before. I'm
to
sorry,
do
go ahead.
so. So I think what we're seeing here, and if I could just take a step back, I think the mayor, I'm glad that the mayor is actually out there pushing for a 200,000 number of units. And I think when you look at that 200,000, most people forget that it's split up. 120,000 of those units are to preserve affordable housing that is already here. The other 80,000 is new units. So I'm glad that the mayor is taking this approach. However, I think what's happening here isn't the mayor basically kind of throwing this at the community. I think this was city planning's proposal for the mayor.
That doesn't. Oh, for the mayor. Well, I'm
For
gonna
the
say
mayor
that.
to put out to the city. And I think what city planning is doing here is taking their approach, and what they're doing at least in my mind, is a little bit dangerous because instead of creating financial alternatives or creating a solution through finance, what they're doing is now changing zoning. And what they're doing is changing
And so the
characters.
burden then becomes on the community to
Absolutely.
alter how it be. And I know that there was a whole thing in the Riverdale Press about people complaining about the character of their community being changed.
Yes.
Let me ask you, do you agree with him, or do you have another idea of how you incentivize
Well,
developers?
I agree with him, but then there should be something in return for the community.
What would you like?
Oh, jobs, jobs, jobs. In
Well,
my
if they build
community.
the housing, you don't get the jobs.
That does not guarantee that we get the jobs. I mean, so
There's a whole, I mean, the thing is very complex. There's a whole thing, and if you go through the proposal about how buildings are built, the whole idea of step back, the idea, if I'm
First
reading
floor.
it correctly, of we have 10-foot floors, and they're talking about making them 8-foot floors. Give me your impression of the range of those kinds of alterations to, in essence, the housing code and the building code.
well, one of the main changes, which of course is to be able to create a scenario whereby you have more commercial space.
That's what I said at the outset,
Yes,
right?
on the
And
first
the
floor.
idea was that if they're taller or if they can, change the size of the
Yes.
floors, then you could have more space in the
And
community.
also to create more privacy compared to what we have presently on the street level apartments.
Yes, we know if you walk by, I mean, you can do it
Yes.
all over the Bronx. You walk by somebody's apartment, their window is right there.
That's right. Those are good. I mean, no doubt about it. Those concepts is okay.
And they may create jobs. You're talking about jobs. If you have commercial space, you can get some
Oh
jobs.
yeah, of course we need the jobs. It's not just
Okay.
creating commercial space. We need the jobs. We don't have park spaces. We don't have open lots or no open spaces.
Right.
And we need more school seats. And several other things. And the character of my community is changing, and it has changed over the years, meaning that income diversity have now been in my community, which of course I'm
Well,
also
isn't
part
this a
of.
good thing? Income diversity, isn't this a good thing?
Well, it is, of course, it is a good thing. It is very good, but when you talk about the density without now giving opportunity for those who are within the community itself.
So your concern is, and this I've heard this kind of thing. Your concern is that if they do some of this building, it's going to bring people from other places in, and those people, in essence, quote unquote, will push current people who currently live there out, and then we have what many are concerned about in the Bronx, and that's gentrification. Is that's a concern for you?
Absolutely. We're very concerned about
And
what will happen
do you
down
think
the road.
this plan could contribute to that because you think it may be developer friendly but not community friendly?
Well,
Is that accurate?
very accurate.
Okay.
Because all the proposals were done prior to even coming to the community. The proposals and the research that city planning did, they did it with providers, with developers, and everybody else. So they only brought the proposal to the community, and of course now we're stuck with something they're presenting.
Then let's talk
that's
a
a
little
very
bit
good
now.
point about-
Dahlia has a full page that we could put because both of your communities are having, I guess, public hearings or
Yeah.
public discussions about it. So we have the times and dates of those. We can put that up on the screen. Talk to me, if you would, about the process. Where are we at right now?
Sure.
There you can see the one for Community Board 8, which is next Monday night at Intech Academy, which is on West 230th Street. And then we'll also get the one for Community Board 5 in a moment. But where are we at in the process? Where does that work?
So, I mean, Dr. Omotosha raised a good point, which is the community boards were kind of like the last to hear. And it was kind of like the inverse of what normally happens. Usually planning starts at the community level, and this is a little different. This was a top-down approach. And the process, just to answer that
Excuse
question.
me, let me interject.
Yeah.
We've got Community Board 5 will be Wednesday the 11th at 6 p.m. at the Davidson Community Center at 2030 Davidson Avenue. Go ahead.
So essentially, city planning had put this out in late September, and they'd put out both plans, and both are very large plans to look at. And they're
Gee,
complex.
I only got through 980 of the
Pages today.
1,000 pages. Go ahead.
So they're both they're large plans. There's a significant amount of information, and we have essentially 60 days from September 21st for the community boards to vote. However, we also after the community boards vote, the borough president will vote. After the borough president,
And I
planning.
should add, I communicated with the borough president's office today, and they said they would not say anything till after the community board's vote,
Yeah.
believing that that was a proper process.
Yeah.
And we should add the value of the community board's vote is simply to let people know what you think. You have no actual input into the process.
No, I mean, we're part of the process, but the real vote actually comes at the very end, and that's the city council. And it's the city council who will ultimately decide whether or not this is going to go through or not.
What would be a better process? We only have about a minute left. What would be a better process?
Well, the better process is for this whole process not to run concurrently. That's the way I feel about it.
What do you mean concurrently?
Concurrently, meaning that we have a separate timetable for the community and community board to determine and have their own 60 days running, not running concurrently with the borough president's timetable that we are now stampede to be able to rush and try to do all this.
And then
things
it'll
within
go
a
to the
short
city
time.
council, and they're going to have to move pretty quickly.
Quickly,
On the
yes.
other, so do you think that the goal here is so that the mayor can get this done before the next campaign?
I
Boy,
think,
that was a loaded question.
yeah.
Especially with only 15 seconds left.
Campaign
Possibly.
promise, possibly.
I think this was designed more. I don't think it had much to do with the mayor, and I think it had to do with city planning. And city planning
And that's not the
decided
mayor.
that. No, it's not the mayor. City
Okay.
planning is an agency, and the agency put these two very sophisticated proposals out at the same time, and it's extremely difficult to absorb even
Sounds
one,
like procedural
let
issue.
alone two.
Dr.
And-
Bola Omatosho
Yeah.
from Community Board 5, Dan Paternak from Community Board 8. Thanks for giving some clarity.
Yes.
We hope people will attend both of those sessions and they can learn more about it. Appreciate your time. If you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, email them to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org or put them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. We ask you to like Bronx Talk on Facebook. You can check out the archives at bronxnet.org. You'll find Bronx Talk on the lower right navigation bar. Next week, Councilmember Richie Torres will be here, and we'll talk about this and other things. And the week after, November 16th, Councilmember Andy King, same topics. So that's what we're doing on Bronx Talk. Thanks to Dalia Gonzalez, who's our producer. The director is Neilani Rodriguez. Good night. See you next week.
I was going to go to college, from a young age. I definitely want to major in political science. After that, I'm going to get my law degree. Then I'm going to come back to Detroit, boost the economy, become the mayor or something, try to make the situation better for other people. I feel like I owe it to the city. I'm determined. It's going to happen. My name is Justin, and I am your dividend.
Barry, time is running out. According to my calculations, 1 in 5 kids in America struggles with hunger. How can so many children face hunger when there's more than enough food to feed them all? You're right, Barry. We can help solve hunger by teaming up with Feeding America to get food to hungry kids in communities across the country.
Help Flint and the Feeding America network of food banks get food to the people who need it in your community. Find your local Feeding America food bank at feedingamerica.org/hunger.
Together, we're Feeding America.